What's going on, guys? Aero here, and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video I want to talk to you a little bit about this article that I know a lot of you keep sending to me on Twitter. Pretty much every time I go to my Twitter, I know a lot of you guys have been just tweeting me this link, sending me to this article here, and saying that you guys want to hear my thoughts on it. So I did take a look at the article a little bit. I didn't finish reading all of it, but it does seem pretty interesting and I do want to give you guys my thoughts on it. Now the article here is in Spanish, so I did have to use Google Translate, so some of the translation might sound a little bit off here, but we can still get a general idea of what it's talking about. Now the source from this article actually comes from Nintendan or Nintendon, I'm not really sure how you say it, but this person is actually a reporter for a lot of Nintendo news websites, is a reporter for Game Explain, Go Nintendo, Nintendo World Report, so it is very possible that this person might have some inside sources that could give them information, and so that's what we have here. Apparently they have heard some information about Pokemon Switch, and so that's been all put together in this article here, which I'm going to talk to you guys about. So it is still a rumor at this point, we don't know for sure, but considering how this person does report on stuff for Game Explain, Go Nintendo, I don't feel like he would just post anything like random online just to mess with people, so I feel like we could take this a little bit more seriously than just some random post that's online, but then again it could still be fake as well. But yeah, it's just a rumor, I wanted to get that out of the way. But yeah, let's take a look at what the article says. So it says here in the article, the wait for information about Pokemon Switch has quite been long since the game was announced last E3 in June of 2017. The level of speculation and emotion has been especially high since it will be the first main series Pokemon game in high definition on a home console. So far, no source of reliable information has wanted to release details about the game, but that might have changed today. Dan Koopman, better known as Nintendan, a reporter for Game Explain, Go Nintendo, and Nintendo World Report, has released some supposed details about the game in a Dutch podcast. Now these details have been translated thanks to a Twitter user. Before going to the information, we want to clarify that Nintendan has many years of experience on reporting news from Nintendo and is not the kind of person who would put out rumors just for fun, so we classified this information as a report. And I can definitely agree with that as well. I've seen Nintendan appear on a lot of like Game Explain discussions, and sometimes if Game Explain gets like a game early, so does Nintendan, and they usually have them on the podcast to talk about like how they feel about the game. So I really don't feel like Nintendan would put out a lot of information unless he actually does have some credible sources. So if we take a look at the information in the article, it says here, as Nintendan mentioned in the podcast, sources close to Game Freak informed him that they were not sure if they would be able to finish the game in time to release it in 2018. However, the sources that are related to Nintendo were much more certain that the game could be launched this year. And I think that this actually makes a lot of sense. I feel like Game Freak just wants to create a game. They're just thinking about like how they're going to make an amazing Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch, how it's going to be in HD, and how it's going to be a fun adventure for all of their fans to play. Whereas Nintendo is kind of caring from the business perspective where they're like, alright, Pokemon is one of our biggest selling franchises. If we can get this game out, then there's going to be Nintendo Switches flying off the shelves this holiday. There's so many people that are going to be buying this game, so we want to make sure that Pokemon Switch is able to come out this year. And so they might be pressuring Game Freak in order to get their 8th generation or whatever Pokemon Switch is going to be. They might be pressuring them to get that game out early so that they're going to be able to have a lot of sales for the Nintendo Switch. Now the next thing that Nintendan was asked in the podcast was what the game was going to be for Pokemon Switch and if it was going to be like a new generation or a remake, and he actually replied saying that I will say this, that it is not going to be the 8th generation, but it is a type of remake and it's not Pokemon Diamond and Pearl that's going to be remade. So this is actually really interesting because I'm pretty certain that I think that Pokemon Switch, the very first Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch, is going to be the 8th generation, as pretty much every time Pokemon's move to a new system, the very first game is always a brand new generation, so I feel like it just makes the most sense to me. But then again, that doesn't mean Game Freak has to follow that formula. They can change it up anytime they want, and we've seen how much they really like changing the formula, especially with like Pokemon Sun and Moon and getting rid of gyms and stuff like that, so they could very well do something like that. I just don't know how I would feel if the first Pokemon game isn't going to be a brand new generation, because I feel like that's what they would want to do, like have a brand new amazing adventure on the Nintendo Switch that would get a lot of people to go out and buy a Switch. I don't know how they would feel if they kind of did a remake of some other region. Now going off of that, we actually have heard from multiple sources about how Pokemon Switch could in fact be a reboot of the franchise and how it could take place in the Kanto region. I mean, if you remember with like Pokeserena and her inside sources, they were telling her that the Chinese Riddler had openly stated that Pokemon on the Nintendo Switch was going to be a reboot of the franchise. I mean, even that screenshot about supposedly leaked gameplay for Pokemon Switch that came out a few weeks ago, even that screenshot hasn't been completely disproven yet, and no one has come out saying like they're the creator of that image, and even in that image it was a picture of the Kanto region. I think it was like the route from Pallet Town to Cinnabar Island, where like the trainer was riding a Lapras, so a lot of people have been saying that the Pokemon Switch game could in fact be a Kanto region to kind of like reboot the franchise. Now personally, I would love to play the Kanto region on my Nintendo Switch in HD. Kanto is my favorite region of all time, so I would have a ton of fun playing that. I know I'm gonna get a lot of you guys who are gonna think that I'm a Gen 1er, but I do love a lot of the other regions as well. It's just that Kanto was the very first region that I played when I played Pokemon Red, so that's why I love Kanto so much. That's what got me into playing Pokemon, but I do like all the other regions as well. But I think that playing Kanto would just be a lot of fun on the Nintendo Switch. Now, after thinking about it a little bit more, I feel like putting the Kanto region as the very first Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch would actually make a lot of sense, because we haven't played through the Kanto region in like a modern setting in a really long time. And I know every time I talk about this, people just say, well, obviously you can play through the Kanto region in Pokemon HeartGold and SoulSilver, but that's not the Kanto that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Kanto where you start at in Pallet Town and move your way up to the Indigo Plateau. Now from the way I see it, we can play through every single region in Pokemon in a modern game except for the Kanto region. If I want to play through Johto, I've got Pokemon HeartGold and SoulSilver. If I want to play through Hoenn, I've got Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. If I want to play through Sinnoh, I've got Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. If I want to play through Unova, I've got Pokemon Black and White. If I want to play through Kalos, I've got X and Y. And then for Alola, I've got Sun and Moon. If I want to play through Kanto though, there is no game that's on the Nintendo 3DS where I can play through Kanto. Now I know that some of you guys are going to want to bring up the fact that you can play through Pokemon Red and Blue on the 3DS's Virtual Console, but that's not a modern Kanto game. That's basically just the old school Pokemon Red and Blue that's put on the Virtual Console. We haven't actually had a modern Kanto game in a really long time, because the last Kanto game that we got was a remake for Pokemon Red and Blue, which was Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, that came out in 2004, which was a really long time ago. Now because of all of this, I feel like it does make sense to have the Kanto region as the very first Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch, and while I hate saying this because it makes me sound old, I do feel like there's probably a lot of people out there who've never experienced the Kanto region and have never played through the Kanto game, so putting that on the Nintendo Switch would be a good move, as there would be a lot of people who'd go out and play the Kanto region because they've never gotten to play it before, and because of how it's a reboot, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new things that they'll add, so even if you play through the Kanto region as like an old school fan, there's probably going to be a lot of new things in here that will get you interested in buying the Nintendo Switch version as well. So I definitely feel like that there's a lot of potential for what they could do if they make a Kanto game as the very first Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, considering how there's been so many new Pokemon that have been created after the original 151 in Kanto, it'd be pretty cool if they could incorporate all of those Pokemon inside of the Kanto region as well. Maybe they could alter some of the gym leaders' teams with these new Pokemon, like instead of Brock having a Geodude and an Onix, maybe he could have like a Rockruff and a Boldore, so that would be pretty cool. Maybe they could change up the story a little bit and add some new characters and some new places. Maybe instead of having like Team Rocket, they could have Team Rainbow Rocket. There's a lot of potential for them, and I think that this is going to be cool, and it will definitely get a lot of the old school fans into playing Pokemon, as well as some of the new people who've never experienced the Kanto region. Now I know that there's going to be a lot of you guys that are going to be thinking like, why does Game Freak keep talking about Kanto? Why does Game Freak keep referring back to Kanto and not any of the other amazing regions that they've created? I'm sick and tired of all this Kanto stuff, and I don't like the Kanto region. Now the thing that you need to understand is that the Kanto region makes the Pokemon Company a lot of money, and that's because of all the people who grew up playing with the Kanto region and all that nostalgia. I remember when Pokemon GO came out, there were so many of my friends who stopped playing Pokemon after like Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, so many of my friends who stopped playing after like Black and White because they didn't want to get a 3DS. There were so many of my friends who downloaded Pokemon GO and were like texting me and telling me like, yo, I remember how like I was able to have a Charizard in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, this is so cool, I'm reliving all those memories again. So the Kanto region is definitely a special place in a lot of people's hearts, and I feel like that would make Game Freak and the Pokemon Company a lot of money, especially if they make a Kanto game as the very first Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, even if we take a look at the sales numbers, Pokemon Red and Blue are the best-selling Pokemon games of all time, and they're even on the list for best-selling video games of all time as well. I can't remember if they're in the top 10 or the top 5, but they're definitely on the best-selling video games of all time list, so Game Freak and the Pokemon Company knows how many people love Kanto. Also, another thing to consider is that if a Kanto game is going to be the very first Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch, I feel like that there is a chance for that game to be able to release this year, and that's because there's not a lot of work that's going to be involved in creating the game. Now sure, they still have to create the assets and the whole region in HD and make it look good on the Nintendo Switch, but at the same time, the region has already been created, the characters have already been created, like the gym leaders, you pretty much know exactly what all the cities are going to be, so there isn't a lot of planning as for the region and stuff like that, but pretty much just adding new Pokemon and changing up the story a little bit. So I feel like in that sense, there's not a lot of work in that way. Pretty much all the work would just be making sure that the game runs well and that the game is properly coded onto the Nintendo Switch. So if that is the case, then I feel like that the game could come out this year. And so there you go guys, that's all the information that we have here about how Pokemon Switch could be a Kanto remake / reboot. Definitely be sure to click that like button if you guys enjoyed this video, and also comment down below and let me know how you feel about this. Would you be okay if it was a Kanto reboot? Do you not want it to be one? Be sure to let me know all of your thoughts down below. If you're new to this channel, then please be sure to subscribe. I'm definitely going to have some more Pokemon content in the future, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Click on that bell to become a part of the notification squad, and go follow me on Twitter at @actualaero. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.